What's happening? Happy Thanksgiving week, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Wildcast podcast. I am Justin Spears, Arizona football beat writer, here with Michael Lev, columnist and senior writer for the Arizona Daily Star. We're going to be previewing all things Territorial Cup leading up to the big game on Saturday between the Wildcats and the Sun Devils, get into the narratives of both teams up to this point. We're also going to answer some of your Twitter or X mailbag questions. And then we'll also do our Big 12 Bonanza picks for the final regular season week of the season. Man, it's going to be an interesting podcast, Lev. We got plenty to talk about, lots of storylines to get into. But more importantly, man, happy Thanksgiving to you.
Thank you very much, Justin. Appreciate it. Same to you. What's funny about any given football season is when you're in the midst of it, it just feels like it lasts forever. It's such a grind. Every single week we're super busy. And then all of a sudden it's over.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad in a way because, there's nothing quite like the madness and chaos of a big college football Saturday. Last week was a shining example of that as all those SEC teams went down. Teams in the Big 12 went down. That have plunged the conference into something of a state of chaos with all these tiebreaker scenarios and all that stuff. We'll get into some of that a little bit later in the show. But yeah, if it's Thanksgiving week in the state of Arizona, that means that it is time for the Territorial Cup. And I thought it was super interesting. The two guys that we had up on the podium on Tuesday, Tyler Loop, the place kicker, and Josh Baker, the center. There are a couple of the guys, not many on the team, who've been here since 2020. So they've been here for 2 wins and they've been here for 2 losses. And, because of the way the COVID year has been categorized, they're in somewhat of a unique position to play in a 5th version of this game, and they can tip the scale one way or the other. So, this is a best of 5 winner take all game for Josh and Tyler and whoever else was here in 2020 and won't be back next year. So just another little subplot to this very important game for both sides, I would say.
Yeah. Well, and that is perfectly set up for what I'm going to talk about next with how these teams got here. Arizona was the team that was expected to be maybe 9-2 at this point of the year going into this season, or it was conceivable, right? Like maybe, a 9-2, maybe some people would say, that's a little crazy, but considering the amount of talent that they had coming back and where they were in the Big 12 race at the start of the year, you felt like maybe this Arizona team can have a splash year in their first season in the Big 12. But man, if you look at the chaos that's happening in the Big 12 right now, it is completely flipped. I mean, the teams that were near the bottom are now at the top with BYU and ASU. I mean, heck, the Sun Devils were voted to finish dead last in the Big 12 race, and now they are 1 win away from playing in a game at Jerry's World and being on the cusp of playing in the college football playoff, which is just absolutely absurd. It's a big credit to Kenny Dillingham and his staff and what they've been able to build in 2 short years. And meanwhile, Arizona, they are 4-7, right? If you were to say, hey, Justin, there's going to be 2 teams playing this Territorial Cup. One's 4-7, one's 9-2, 1 game away from the college football playoff. I would have bet my entire life savings at the start of the year that one of those teams, that 9-2 team, was going to be the Arizona Wildcats. There's no way ASU is going to be that team. And now the Sun Devils are here at this moment. And Arizona, they're trying to salvage their season a little bit because it has been disappointing. They rode a 5-game losing streak earlier in the year. And then now they're out of a bowl game. So how can they salvage their season? I think that they could beat the ASU Sun Devils, win the Territorial Cup, and I think it gives the vibes feeling good again about the Wildcats going into the offseason.
It absolutely does. Things are not the way we expected them to be, which we shouldn't be surprised about that because that stuff happens all the time in college football, right? The expectations are seldom met. You should expect the unexpected for the most part. I mean, there are a handful of constants, like Ohio State, for example, is always good. That's one of them, but other, Georgia has been really good. I mean, even Alabama is on the outside looking in now, after the coaching change. And we all know what the impact of that was, to be sure. But there is something to be said, if you're Arizona, for winning this last game, and the impact that it can have. Number one, as you mentioned, you can pretty much spoil Arizona State's season. I mean, they have so much at stake. Seems like, based on all the tiebreaker scenarios, they're maybe in the best spot. If they win, it seems like they're pretty much a shoe-in to get in to the Big 12 championship game. So you can ruin their season, basically, and you can generate badly needed momentum heading into the offseason. I mean, there is just like not a whole lot to feel good about right now if you're Arizona football. And Brent Brennan is doing his best to be enthusiastic and optimistic, and we're going to do it the right way, and we're going to recruit, and we're going to build a championship program. But, seeing is believing, right? And the first impression was not great, to say the least. So just think about what it would feel like for the Arizona fan base if they were to win this game, storm the field at Arizona Stadium, and that's the last image you have of this otherwise disappointing 2024 campaign. You're looking for something to sell.
Yeah.
You can sell that.
Well, I think it goes back to the 2016 season, which I believe was your first full year on the beat.
Correct.
Michael Lev, where
Yep.
Arizona, they went 3-9. Their only conference win in Pac-12 play was against ASU, and how they did it by running the ball the entire second half, beating them by I think like 3 or 5 touchdowns or something like that. Like, they clobbered ASU, and no one ever remembers about the 3-9 season. They remember Arizona beating an ASU team that had some guys on that team too. Like N'Keal Harry was playing for the Sun Devils. Like, it wasn't like ASU was just a bad team. Arizona on that specific night was just the better team, and they were able to get the vibes feeling good again about Arizona despite finishing 3-9. And I think playing spoiler, even though Arizona, they're not playing up that role this week, like Brent Brennan's kind of playing it cool. Like, hey, we're just trying to go out and win this game. But I think there is something to be said about playing spoiler because, in 1986, Chuck Cecil had one of the greatest plays, if not the greatest play in Arizona football history with that pick six against ASU. That year, they prevented the Sun Devils from going to the Rose Bowl, which, heck, any Pac-12 school, Pac-10 school, like, that is a sign of having a terrific season if you can get to that Rose Bowl. Arizona kept them from getting to the Rose Bowl, and that made them feel good about that season. I think Arizona can maybe replicate the same thing, but man, it's going to be really hard because this ASU team, it seems like week by week, they're just getting better. Like, they are really hitting their stride right now. But in a rivalry game, Lev, none of that matters. Records go out the window. Like Tyler Loop said, it's about pride. It's about honor. It's about respect. And it's just about figuring out a way to beat the hell out of that other team on the other side.
Yeah, I would say that this Arizona team is better than that Arizona team was. But I would also say this ASU team is better than that ASU team was. I think that ASU team was 5-6 going into that last game, so it's preventing them from going to a bowl. The final score was 56-35. As you mentioned, Arizona ran the ball in every single play in the second half. That ain't going to happen on Saturday, I assure you. I'd be very, very surprised to see a game plan of that nature. I would also be very surprised to see Arizona score 56 points. But is there a path to victory? And maybe there is. And I think it's imperative to get off to a really good start, right? I think the crowd is going to be 40% ASU fans, maybe. Like, I think they're going to be well represented at this game. And you gotta get that crowd on your side. Okay, so get off to a good start. And what happens if you do that is all the pressure's on ASU going into the game, and that pressure is just ratcheted up even more.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they know what's at stake. As much as Kenny Dillingham is probably telling them just focus on this week, 1-0, all that stuff. They know what's going on, right? So get the lead, get off to a good start, maybe get an early turnover, early touchdown, something. And the vibe in the building can definitely work in your favor if you do that. You got to let them know from the get-go that it's going to be a fight. If you go back to the nightmare that was the 2020 Territorial Cup, we talked about this a little bit with Tyler Loop, who was not the kickoff guy at that time, but the opening kickoff was taken back for a touchdown, right? And then there was a turnover, and it was just an absolute avalanche, leading to the devastation of 70-7. Cannot let anything of the sort happen again like that. Got to get off to a good, clean, crisp start and let ASU know, hey, we're in this thing for 60 minutes.
My only concern is on the offensive line, Jonah Savianea, who left the TCU game with an injury. What's his status for this week? And if he is, because this is really the first time we've seen Big Jonah injured. A big credit to him. Like, Jonah has been healthy for the entire part of his 3-year career at Arizona. And this was really the first time I saw him kind of limp off the field, and it looked like it could be something significant or something that could keep him out from the ASU game. And, he's got to think about NFL future and all that stuff. That we're at that point now, right, where Arizona's out of a bowl game. So do people decide to opt out? It's cool that Tetairoa McMillan is not opting out. We'll talk about him here in just a little bit, but man, Big Jonah, if he is unable to go at that left tackle spot, you're going to put in Michael Wooten, who has struggled this year. And then on the other side, you got Joey Capra, who signed to play at Arizona as a guard/center. And that's where you say, like, I don't think Arizona's going to run the ball the entire second half. And I'm like, Lev, if Big Jonah ain't playing, that might be their plan, is to go like full service academy, triple option, just run trap the entire play and just hope for the best. But I think Arizona's success on Saturday will depend on whether Big Jonah plays or not.
It's a huge factor. We're recording this on Wednesday afternoon. We're going to talk to, Wednesday morning. We're going to talk to Brent Brennan on Wednesday afternoon. Hopefully we'll get an update on Jonah Savianea's status. I think that he is the most important player on the team, or I'd say the most irreplaceable player, right? I mean, obviously Tetairoa McMillan is incredible. He's going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. Hard to replace a guy like that, but they have other competent wide receivers at the very least. They have other quarterbacks. They don't have another a left tackle who's ready for a game like this. Michael Wooten is a developing player. I know he's a redshirt sophomore, so you maybe think he'd be further along at this point in his career, but he had a lot of injury issues.
Yeah.
At Oregon, so I would put him in that developmental pool. They're missing, several guys because of injury. Joey Capra was sort of a desperation move to put him out there at right tackle. Like Ryan Stewart is someone you might think about, but he's been injured. So yeah, I think that's significant. And if we discover today that Jonah is out, I think Arizona's in real deep trouble in this game. I mean, they will have to significantly alter their schematics and leave a tight end in or running back to help, and might have to do it on both sides. And then you limit how many guys are going out in the route, and you make it easier for ASU to defend that. But I would also like to talk about the other side of the ball, if we can. That to me is just as interesting. As we all know, the engine that makes ASU run is running back Cameron Scadaboo. And he is having an absolutely spectacular season. Better in every shape and form than he was last year when he was pretty good. But you look at his rushing yards, his average per carry, his yards after contact, his receiving yards, everything way better than it was before. They also have a very efficient quarterback in Sam Levitt, who has thrown only 5 interceptions the whole season. Noah Fafita's thrown 12. 12 is tied for the third most in the country. The most is 13. So 12 is a lot of interceptions in today's day and age. Sam Levitt's also a good rusher. He has 356 rushing yards this year, and that total would have been higher if Kenny Dillingham hadn't lost his mind at the end of that game last week and cost his quarterback a bunch of rushing yards. So And they have a really good receiver too in Jordan Tyson. So they have kind of the triplets. They have a really good quarterback, a really good running back, and a really good receiver. If I am Arizona in this game, I am going to completely sell out to stop the run. That is the number one mode of travel for the Sun Devils. If you look at Sam Levitt's average pass attempts per game, he's only 26.5 pass attempts per game. I mean, he hasn't thrown more than 38 in a game. He only has one 300-yard game. I mean, this team, it starts with the run. So the only way you're going to slow this offense down, to me, is by making it really hard on Cameron Skattebo. I don't know if Arizona has the personnel to pull that off, but I would just throw as many resources as I could into putting guys in the box, population to the football, as Brent Brennan calls it, and see if you can slow him down and force Kenny Dillingham to maybe, play a style of offense that he doesn't necessarily want to play.
Cam Skattebo, I'm trying to figure out what's a good comparison for him. He's not Toby Gerhart, is he? Like a big, powerful running back who just can truck you and run over you. He's so hard to bring down.
He's a good receiver too. Yeah, I mean, he threw a touchdown pass last year. He's a good all-around player. I mean, you always, anytime there's a big, powerful white running back, people will say Toby Gerhart or they'll say Mike Allstott. I'd say in terms of his running style, like
Peyton Hillis.
Peyton Hillis. I mean, Jonah Coleman comes to mind.
Yeah.
He's bigger than Jonah. Jonah's probably 5'7". Skattebo's bigger than that. He's a load. And the last thing you want to see, to me, if you're Arizona, is this guy rushing for 200 yards in this game. If my strategy fails and Sam Levitt throws a bunch of touchdown passes, I can live with it. It's the lesser of two evils to me. So yeah, he's public enemy number one if I'm the Arizona defense this week. Stop Skattebo.
But this is also going to be an interesting game too, because it's the last game of the season, which means it is the last time that we will see several players play at Arizona. A lot of seniors, right? Josh Baker, who's been a multi-year starter at center, kicker Tyler Loop, who will go down as one of the greatest kickers in Arizona football history, maybe the greatest kicker in U of A football history. If you look at his field goal percentage, currently number one in Arizona history. His field goal percentage is also 24th in college football history at 84.8. This guy is one of the greatest Arizona kickers of all time. And I feel like next year we're really going to see just how special Tyler Loop was. With all due respect to Michael Salgado Medina and any of the other kickers, replacing a guy like that is so hard. When you know that anytime you get around the 40-yard line, you could just throw out Loop and it's like an automatic 3 points. So I think that Tyler Loop celebrating him would be great. But you know what? For a lot of these guys, these draft eligible players, it's going to be their last time at Arizona Stadium. And the one that highlights them the most is Tetairoa McMillan, the Arizona star wide receiver. And, he came to Arizona when the program was in rebuild mode. Did it help having Noah Fafita and Kean Burnett and Jacob Manu and his high school buddies all signed to Arizona? Absolutely. But getting a guy like T-Mac was such a big get for Arizona at that time, especially because they were 1-11. Coming off a 1-11 season and getting a recruit like that was spectacular. But then he came in to Arizona and elevated his game, was an impactful freshman, and then last year really took off, emerged as one of the top wide receivers in college football. And now this year, he is a bona fide first-round pick, a top 10 guy, set the Arizona receiving record in 3 years left. That's the thing that I didn't even think about until I checked it yesterday. I'm like, hold on, let me look at some of these other guys on Arizona's all-time receiving yards list. All these guys did it in 4 years. T-Mac did it in 3 years, and he's doing it without a bowl game this year. So he did it without a bowl game in his first year too. So T-Mac is, in my opinion, the best Arizona receiver ever. And it's going to be the last time that the best recruit in Arizona football history and the best receiver in Arizona football history will suit up for the Wildcats once again. It's going to be a special day for T-Mac.
I don't know when I first said it, but I've definitely said it that you could make a strong argument he's the best football player that's ever worn an Arizona uniform. I mean, people will argue about Rob Waldrop. They'll argue about Teddy Bruschi.
Ricky
These
Hundley.
are all Ricky Hundley, Chris McAllister, whom Dwayne Aquina brings up at every single press conference. That's the Chris McAllister. Yeah, Chris McAllister drinking game, right? So is he the greatest? Those things are always subjective. But man, what a superstar. It's unusual in some ways for a guy to completely live up to or even exceed the expectations that you have for him. But he's done that. Like he's been that guy. And he's going to be dearly missed. I find it fascinating that even up to this week, people are still asking the question, like, is he going to sit out this week? Like, why? Like you asked him after the game because you kind of have to, right? You're obligated to do so, but he hasn't sat out at all. I mean, there were rumors before the season that he wasn't even going to play this year, right? Because he was coming off an injury. We heard, a colleague of mine heard from a prominent national college football reporter who asked him, I heard T-Mac's going to sit out this season. Is that true? It's weird, right? And we talked to Bobby Wade about that a lot yesterday. And he was just saying how when you're at the top, people try to knock you down. So there's been a lot of that. There's been announcers speculating about his body language, about his health. Like he's not running hard. And he ends up with, whatever he had the other day, 9 for 115. Like a bad game for him is like 6 for 76, and he's doing it in an offense that really hasn't functioned that great all season. And he's doing it with, for most of the year, there wasn't a solid secondary option out there. And now he has one in Chris Hunter, someone who's emerged over the latter half of the season. He's done it without complaint. He's taken a lot of hits. He's done everything that they've asked him to do, and there's been he hasn't, like asked for or received any superstar treatment other than, I guess, he and Noah doing that documentary series.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I mean, he has been a great representative of this program and this town. And I said it way back in January when Noah and T-Mac decided they would stay here. That made them legends, like there's nothing they could do to tarnish their legacy at that point. So kudos to him. I'm sure it'll be very bittersweet for him to play his last, probably, play with his BFF, Noah Fifita, for the very last time. And wouldn't they love it to go out with a win?
And that's the thing, man. These guys have been teammates since the 8th grade. Think about that. 3 different levels of football between middle school, high school, and now you're playing Power 4 football at the highest level. A lot of passes thrown between these two guys, a lot of touchdowns between Noah Fifita and Tetairoa McMillan. And hopefully we get to see one last touchdown at Arizona Stadium. That would be a nice send-off for them to end this disappointing season, but also, end T-Mac's career. Now, Noah Fifita, we don't know what his plans are moving forward. I would imagine that he's probably going to stick around in college football. I would actually probably bank on Noah Fifita coming back to Arizona and still representing the program. But, things change. Certain things change. But I feel it that Noah Fifita is going to be back as an Arizona Wildcat, which is good news for the U of A because they get to hold on to their franchise quarterback.
We'll talk about this more next week and in the coming weeks, but people need to brace themselves for a wild ride in the college football offseason. There's going to be massive roster turnover at Arizona and just about everywhere else. There is going to be an absolute ton of movement going out and a ton of movement coming in, and half the roster is going to be different next year. It just is. And if you're Arizona, I think, your number one objective, and Brent Brennan alluded to this, is you got to keep your core together. That means guys like Noah Fafita, Wendell Moy, Tai Yungalale, Genesis Smith, Chris Hunter, Dalton Johnson. Hopefully, Gunnar Maldonado and Traden Stukes will decide to come back. Jacob Manu, Rhino Tapatotai. I mean, this is going to sound weird, Justin, but it's the guys who are injured. I'm not saying it is a good thing that anyone ever gets injured, but it kind of reminds me of when you're recruiting in baseball and a star pitcher blows out his UCL and needs Tommy John, and he goes to college instead of going into the draft because, he's needs to rehab and he's not, at peak levels. It might actually help Arizona to keep some of these guys, the fact that they're injured, and, not as not in their best form heading into the, college football version of free agency. Right.
Well, also some of these guys were going to graduate this year. Like, this was supposed to be a senior day for Traden Stukes.
Yeah.
And Gunnar Maldonado. And now these like, oh, I get to come back for another year, medically redshirt. So, and I asked Brent Brennan this on radio. I'm like, it almost kind of sets you guys up nicely for next year, even though I'm sure you wanted to have the good year this year. And he was like, yes, I would love to have those guys this year. That is the best case scenario. But Jacob Manu, Gunnar Maldonado, like, I think these guys, if they come back from injury, they're going to come back nicely and have a big role. So, all right. Shall we get into the mailbag questions?
Yeah, we got a handful here. Big show today, Justin. The only one podcast this week, so we're here for the people. We'll go as long as we need to go.
Absolutely.
Get all of this knocked out. We've got a big Big 12 bonanza to get to. It's the final week of the regular season. Last chance for you guys to catch up to me.
Oh,
that in a minute. Well, I'll start with this one. We kind of talked about this a little bit here, but this was from Catbacker at Zona7378. Wouldn't it be in T-Mac's best interest to sit out the ASU game, considering how chippy that game is, or would it tarnish his image here? I said earlier that nothing could damage his legacy. I think that would damage it a little bit. People would be mad at him for sure if he sat out. I just don't think he would do that to his teammates. I don't think he would do that to his buddy, Noah Fafita. As we mentioned, this is the last time probably that they're going to play together. So you want it to be at your home stadium. You want it to be against ASU, and you want to go out with a win. Like, the record is nice. It's great. But as he himself said afterward, it's a team sport.
Yep.
And nothing would feel better for those guys than to go out with a win over your arch rival, be a part of a field storming, all that good stuff.
He chose Arizona twice. He chose it when he came out of high school. He also chose Arizona again after Jedd Fisch left. He loves Arizona. He loves being here. And I think even though he got the record, he wants to end things the right way. And, he also values this game coming up here because it's the last time that he's going to suit up with his buddy Noah Fafita. I don't think he wants to go out the way he did against TCU in a loss, letting that be the last game of his Arizona career. So I think T-Mac one last time at Arizona Stadium. We got to appreciate it because I don't know if we're ever going to see another guy like that suit up for the Wildcats. And I think it says a lot about his maturity. And you know what? You know who's also paying attention to that? NFL scouts. NFL scouts and GMs, they're all looking at this guy like, in the era of opt-outs, you're not playing for anything. And yet you're playing in that last game of the season because it means that much to you. I think that can also improve his draft stock. And a lot of NFL scouts would appreciate that.
Sure. Okay. So when we talked to Brent on Monday, he was talking a lot about NIL and things of this nature. He said, I agree with Kenny. That's Kenny Dillingham. The rules are what they are. Let's pay the kids. Got a response to that post from BT at AZ Wildcat for Life. Is NIL not paying the kids? Is it more the fact there isn't a good structure surrounding NIL? Teams with heavy endowments are going to win this game, Arizona not being one of them. I don't think that's what Brent meant. I think he was just saying that he is in favor of the way things are headed, right? That the student athletes, especially in the sport of football, deserve to be paid whatever their market value is, right? Whether that's coming from revenue sharing, whether that's coming from NIL collectives. I think that's all he's trying to say. I don't think he was making any sort of implication that they're not getting what they deserve here. Arizona might not be able to pay as much as some other schools, or its collective might not be able to pay as much as some other schools. But those kids have got a pretty good deal going, as far as I'm concerned. They're going to get revenue sharing. They're going to get NIL money. Their school is paid for. That's not so horrible.
No, and I think certain donors are going to step up and realize if Arizona wants to keep up with the Joneses, they're going to have to put some money together for the NIL collective. Isn't Woody Johnson the owner of the Jets? He's an Arizona guy, right?
Yeah, he is. So is Artie Moreno is too. I know.
You got who's Joe Lynn, who
I would
married
also say
the founder of Oracle, who got the Bryce Underwood to flip to Michigan.
Yeah.
You have people.
We'll talk about that in a second. Yeah,
you got people that are getting 5-star quarterbacks as wedding gifts, and what is Arizona doing for NIL?
Yeah,
donors got to step up.
The Woody Johnsons and Artie Morenos of the world, as far as we know, haven't contributed to the U of A athletic department. They're also two of the least liked owners in professional sports, whose franchises have been floundering for whatever that's worth. I don't know. I guess if the check still cashes, who cares, right? But it certainly would be. It seems like in Arizona's best interest to tap some of those potential revenue streams. He also mentioned the word endowment in there, and this is something that's kind of confusing even for me. But endowment usually is that refers to the academic side. I'm not aware of any school that has tapped into its endowment for academic reasons. But those schools usually have this huge kind of war chest sitting there for that. And I don't know, it always seems to me like it's separate pools of money. So, all right. So this great segue, Justin. Ben Williams writes, with Michigan's record-breaking $10 million for 4 years NIL deal, do you think we will see a college player sign a larger deal than any NFL contract in the next few years? Okay, this is in reference to Bryce Underwood.
Well, Bryce Underwood's making more than Justin Fields.
Yeah, that might be so. And it was Larry Ellison, who is the founder of Oracle, who apparently is worth over $200 billion, who footed the bill for this. And here's what I'll say. First of all, we do not know, because these contracts are never publicized, or they're not public in the same way that like professional contracts are. Is this cash? Like, is he getting $12 million up front? Is he getting it paid over the course of 4 years? Is it like the value of the deal that includes other things? Like you get a car for 4 years, you get housing for 4 years, and that counts as X amount of money. We don't know that. Okay. So that's one thing. The other thing is, if you're talking about any NFL contract, yes, of course, like he's making more on a per year basis than what the minimum salary is, but he's not making more than, if you're the 5th pick in the draft. Right. And again, like, I don't know what the guarantees are on these deals, because it's still so kind of murky, this world in a way, but it's definitely an eye opener when you see something like that happening. And we're, I think we're just another step closer to the full on professionalization of college football, where there's going to be some sort of a collective bargaining. They're basically going to be employees. And, from a fan perspective, the upshot of that might be that guys can't just leave whenever they want if they sign these kind of deals.
Yeah.
Like, hey man, you got a contract. Maybe you're not as willing to sign a quote unquote 4-year deal if it prevents you from transferring. I don't know what the language is in this.
Yeah.
But I'm sure Larry Ellison and Michigan fans would be pretty pissed off if he decided to leave after a year, go somewhere else, if that's even possible.
I feel like an offensive lineman recently did that. Was it Proctor from Alabama? He went to Bama and then went to Iowa
and then back to Bama
and then went back to Bama. But when he was in Iowa for a little bit, got a bunch of NIL deals and then ran off with all the money and went back to Bama.
Do you have to return that stuff? I don't know how that works.
It's weird.
It's still weird. Okay. All right. this, let me get to this. This one on someone DM'd me. They asked that their identity not be revealed when we answered the question.
All right, Brett.
Okay, it's not Brett. What's your honest assessment of the competence of the current staff as coaches? I know they are good people, good guys. You've been around a lot of coaching staffs. How do these people stack up? You can start on that one, Justin.
Well, I think that this Arizona football staff, like Brent Brennan, is a really good leader. And one thing I found very interesting from our press conference earlier in the week was Josh Baker said that they practice harder than any staff that he's been a part of. And remember, Josh Baker's been a part of 3 different coaching staffs. He was a part of Kevin Sumlin. He was a part of Jed Fish, and now Brent Brennan. For him to just come out and say that, like, we practice harder than any other coaching staff I've been a part of. Now, some Arizona fans could be like, well, maybe that's why they're injured all the time. Injuries also comes with a little bit of luck too. Last year's Arizona team was very, very fortunate when it came to the injuries. This year's team is kind of dealt a crappy hand. Like, I think about it, this year kind of reminds me a little bit of that 2015 Arizona football season, where in 2014, they went to the Pac-12 championship. They went to the Fiesta Bowl. Things were looking really good for Rich Rodriguez. The following season, they bring back Scooby Wright. They have a new Solomon. They have all these great players. Everything's great for Arizona football. And then the injuries start to pile up, and Arizona starts to lose games. Next thing you know, they go from Pac-12 championship, Fiesta Bowl, to then New Mexico Bowl, which was Michael Lebb's first game on the beat at Arizona. So
yeah, on the if I may, I'm going to interrupt you real quick.
Go for it.
Because I got to point this out on the injury front. Okay, ASU has had 4 players on the offensive line start 11 games out of 11 at the same positions this season. The only changes they have been at the right guard position, where 3 different guys have played. So they have had
continuity.
Compare that to Arizona. They have had 0 players start every game at the same position. They have had 1 player start every game, period, and that's Jonas Avanaya, who might not be available for the Arizona Bowl, for the Territorial Cup on Saturday. ASU's had 3 different offensive line combinations. Arizona has had 6. That illustrates your point right there. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
But like, there's so many things that have happened this season for this coaching staff that I feel like they haven't really gotten a fair shot from Arizona fans. And one thing that really speaks highly about this staff and the competence and all that, like UCF game, they looked like they were down in the dumps. They were ready for that bye week, right? But outside of that UCF game, I think it's fair to say that they've been showing effort in every single game. Like, have things gotten out of hand? Have things become an avalanche for the other team? Absolutely, sure. But I've never at any point, maybe besides the UCF game, have felt like this team is totally just checked out and they just did not show up whatsoever.
What did we talk about during training camp before all this stuff happened? What were the concerns?
Health.
Offensive line and overall depth, right? And what has set them back this year? Offensive line and overall depth.
Yeah.
The competence of the coaching staff. I think Brent Brennan is very well liked in the coaching community, in the media, in the locker room, right? I mean, the players, every player we ask, he's a player's coach. Tyler Loop talked about his open door policy, saying it's a real open door policy. You can go in there and talk to him about anything at any time. You like to hear that sort of thing about your head coach. But you also have to look at the on-field results, right? And they were not there this year. And I think the biggest problem that Brent had, and it's continuing, is that the offense was never right. It was never right. He decided to install, Dino Babers as offensive coordinator. Dino Babers, someone that he worked for way back in the day, a former long-time head coach of college football who had not called plays in a long time. And whatever type of offense they tried to put together, it just wasn't a good fit for their personnel. They never looked completely comfortable in this offense, the same way that they did when they really had things rolling last year. And that was a mistake. And it's one that hopefully, they'll be able to correct this offseason. It seems like they're going to get another offseason to get things right. If Desiree Reed-Francois had decided to move on from Brent Brennan, it would have been an unprecedented move in the history of Arizona football. Something that's basically never happened before, certainly in the modern era, moving on from a coach after 1 year. And, I think he deserves at least one more year to get this right. And this upcoming month of December is going to be critical. And I think it's going to speak to the competency of the coaching staff. Can they get good players to come here through recruiting and through the transfer portal? Because that is really the only path to turning this thing around. Is you got to get more dudes.
Linemen in that first window. That's very important.
Offensive lineman, defensive lineman. I think wide receiver would be the spots I would look at most. Maybe cornerback too. We don't know what Sicario Davis's future is going to be, and that second corner spot has been very inconsistent this year. So,
by the way, we got a question from Brett Farah. He said a 3-9 ASU team from 2023 is well on its way to 10 wins, maybe CFP. A 10-win Arizona team is now a 4/5 win team a year later. Florida State was 10th to start the season, now 2-9. Oklahoma State had Heisman frontrunner and was a trendy CFP pick, yet now dead last in Big 12. 3 of the 4 CFP teams from last season are not going to make this year's expanded 12-team CFP. To what degree are these teams truly better or worse than they should be? And to what degree is this what we need to be ready for moving forward? It's a good question.
He makes a great point. It's kind of what it reminds me of is the NFL, where there's always turnover, like who makes the playoffs from 1 year to the next. It's usually like about half the teams that made it the previous year don't make it the next year, where parity runs rampant and it's welcomed because all the games, well, sometimes the product itself is not that aesthetically pleasing. Like almost every game comes down to the end, right? There's always drama at the end of these games. When you look at like all these SEC teams that now have 3 losses, hey man, like no one made you add Texas and Oklahoma to your to your conference to make it better, right? So these are some of the consequences. No one forced the Big Ten to add USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington, but now they have, and they're that much bigger, and there's more good teams to face. And if your schedule breaks the wrong way, things can go in a bad direction for you. I think that there is way more unpredictability in college football now because of the roster turnover that I alluded to. Sometimes it looks really good on paper and it doesn't pan out. I think like you look at Ohio State, they did add a couple really big pieces, but for the most part, they retained their really, really good players. Like a lot of guys who could have gone pro decided to come back because they invested a bunch of money in keeping them, right? So that was maybe you could see that coming. But like, did anyone think Florida State was going to be this bad? I mean, I think they spent a lot on their, on NIL to bring guys in. I mean, people thought Ole Miss, this was going to be their year. And they're very close. I mean, their 3 losses are all by, I think 6 points or less. But right now, they're on the outside looking in at the playoff. As you mentioned, the Big 12 is completely upside down based on what we thought was going to happen. We probably have less understanding of what might happen than we ever have before, because you can't just look at, so-and-so's got 18 of 22 starters returning, they're going to be good. You never know how the mix of players is going to look and how it's all going to go.
All right, one last question before we get to Big 12 picks. I don't know if you have any more mailbag questions left.
Go ahead. I might have one more if I can find it. Go ahead.
This one comes from Joseph52. When Brennan was hired, do you believe he thinks he signed up for a rebuild, or is it just after the fact now that he is trying to gaslight the public into believing the talent was never there?
Okay. The idea of let's do it. What he said, what he meant kind of thing. Okay. if your contention is that Brent Brennan is saying that they don't have enough talent, okay, I think that is in reference to players 40 through 80 on the roster. It is not in reference to players 1 through 20 on the roster, because there's no disputing that this Arizona team had a lot of star power coming back, right? Really good top end talent, really impressive starting lineup. I think what he's talking about when he makes references to that sort of thing is that the depth wasn't there. The big bodies, in case one big body goes down, you got another one ready to go. People will blame him and his staff. Why didn't you bring in better players? And I've tried to explain this multiple times, but when you go into the portal on January 15th, it is not the same as going into the portal on like December 5th.
Nope.
Right? It's like going to the store Wednesday night. There's just a perfect reference here. Going to the store like the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, and expecting the shelves to be fully stocked with all of your Thanksgiving feast needs. Like in all likelihood, they're going to be like half full. You're going to have to buy the generic version of the cranberries or whatever. No offense to any of the players that they brought in. They did the best that they could. But they had, relatively slim pickings at that point. Like the very best players had already signed with, committed to, or whatever other teams in December. So, like I said, this upcoming month of December, I think will be critical because they have to bring in dudes.
Yep.
Point blank.
All right, Lev, you got one more?
I'm trying to find it. I hit a wrong button during the thing here. It's okay. We'll save that one for later because it was kind of a bigger picture college football type of question about the playoff and stuff. So we can save it for another podcast. I'll find it and we'll get back to it.
Big 12 Bonanza, baby. Let's go.
Okay. All right.
Big 12 picks, then we'll get into the Territorial Cup game.
Yeah. Okay. I should be happier about this than my initial whatever noise that was. Because I am 47, 42, and 1 against spread after going 4-4 last week. You guys were both 3-5, you and our former sports editor, Brett Farah. So you are both 43, 46, and 1. My lead in the season-long race has grown to 4 games in the against the spread competition, which I think we will continue throughout the bowl season and the playoff with games involving Big 12 teams. So there's still time to make up ground. Straight up, Brett and I both went 5-3 last week. So we are both 54 and 36. And Justin, you went 4-4. You're 49 and 41 straight up. What do you have to say for yourself, Justin? How do you what's your pitch to the people out there to let them know that you got this, you can make a comeback?
Well, I feel like Big 12 has been drunk all year long. So I feel like if I make some pretty drunk picks this week, then I could really get myself back into this race.
You're doubling down.
Let's go, baby.
Yeah,
let's go.
I like it. Okay. All right. So we have a couple Friday games. The first one is Oklahoma State at Colorado. This game is at 10 a.m. Arizona time, 10 a.m. kickoff in Boulder. I'm sure they love that up there. Little Thanksgiving hangover effect for the people up there in Boulder. This game's on ABC, so hey, the Big 12 has cracked the SEC schedule and gotten a game on the big network here.
How about that?
Which is nice. Our point spread for this game is 16.5. Colorado clinging to a spot in the college football playoff. They still do have a path to make it. Ranked 25th. They can get to the Big 12 championship game. Might need some things to break their way. This is a spotlight and showcase opportunity for Heisman frontrunner Travis Hunter. This is an opportunity for the Buffaloes to redeem themselves after losing last week at Kansas, where they gave up 331 rushing yards. Not great. I don't know if you saw the story, but the Kansas punter is from Australia, and like his parents flew across the world to come and see him, and he never punted. Jayhawks
Oh man.
never punted in that game. That's how bad Colorado's defense was. Now they're facing Ollie Gordon. 15 carries, 156 yards, 3 touchdowns last week. Oklahoma State played a freshman quarterback whose first name I'm going to butcher. Maya Liuaki Smith went 26 of 36, 326 yards, 2 touchdowns. This is the future quarterback in all likelihood if he doesn't flop this week, or at least will be competing for the job for the Cowboys next year. But, huge but, Oklahoma State's defense is terrible.
Awful.
They gave up 543 yards against Texas Tech. They are last or next to last in the league in scoring defense, total defense, rushing defense, passing defense, 133rd nationally in total defense. I think this is going to be a situation where Colorado is going to put up 50 or 60 points. And it's a display for Shedeur to win awards, a display for Travis Hunter to win awards. Great home field advantage for the Buffs. Lots at stake for them. I will lay the 16.5 points. I would have laid more than this. And I'm going to take the Buffaloes. Win and cover.
Yeah, Colorado wins and covers. Deion Sanders said last week that Colorado got intoxicated off their own success. I think after getting a little too drunk, dealing with their hangover in the last week, I think they were able to consume a good hash brown from McDonald's, eat some orange juice or drink some orange juice, and now the hangover is cured. And the Buffaloes, they figure out a way to get it done.
He said, like, after the previous game about Travis Hunter, he was like, he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke dope. You know, just talking about it's just, Deion says things that no other coach will ever say about anyone. It's so entertaining, but I'm sure it's true. You love to hear that if you're an NFL team interested in Travis Hunter, if he's all about ball. That's what you want, right?
Absolutely.
Someone whose life is consumed with football. Brett is taking Colorado, but he's taking the points. Taking Oklahoma State to beat that 16.5. I mean, look, Colorado, they could win by 14. It's not inconceivable, but man, Oklahoma State's been so bad. That game last week against Texas Tech was a Big 12 classic, 56-48. Their only hope is to outscore people because their defense has been that terrible, and I don't think they can do it against Colorado. Okay, we've got Utah at UCF also on Friday. This is a 6:00 game on Fox. And our point spread is UCF by 9.5. Utah almost did it last week. I picked them to win straight up. Justin, they almost pulled it off against Iowa State, but they were kind of lucky, honestly, to be in that game. They got outgained 405-224. They had another quarterback injury. So Luke Botari had to go in and play quarterback, who I think is their 4th stringer, maybe their 5th stringer. He has appeared in 4 games in his career. This will be his first career start. This upcoming week, he has 21 career passing attempts. UCF lost at West Virginia last week, though they did outgain the Mountaineers 348-318. They have RJ Harvey, who has a chance to be a first-team All-American. I mean, he is an absolute stud. We saw that firsthand. We saw what that home crowd can be like at UCF. I think Utah emptied the tank the last couple weeks. I don't think they've got anything left. I don't think they have anything left to play for. I don't think they want to be in Orlando this week as much as Whittingham is going to try to motivate them for this game. I just don't see it. I think this is UCF all the way. I would lay more than 9.5 points and take the Knights in this one, but I will gladly take that number under 10, UCF to win and cover.
In the last 8 games, UCF only has 1 win. That 1 win is against the Arizona Wildcats. It's crazy, man. They've had a bad year this year. And then, of course, the space game was the game that they had to play, the Arizona Wildcats. Like you said, Lev, RJ Harvey, one of the best running backs in all of college football. I think he had 130 yards and a couple of touchdowns last week against West Virginia. I think he stamps his UCF career. He's already the best running back in program history. Why not go out on top? They're not making it a bowl game, but I think kind of like Tetairoa McMillan in a lot of way, one of the greatest players in program history. They're going to have a nice send-off for him on Saturday. So I'm going with UCF.
I want to say he's an Orlando kid too.
Oh, good for him.
RJ. That's cool. Yeah, very meaningful for him to play that last game. Senior day, of course, for UCF. Brett is taking UCF to win, Utah to cover. So he is going against the grain, both of us. All right. Saturday slate starts at 10 a.m. Kansas at Baylor. This game is on ESPN2. Baylor 7-4, chance to get to 8-4. Still technically alive for the Big 12 championship game. We are not going to go over all of the tiebreakers and all of the scenarios, but there is a very, very minute chance that'll happen. But it could happen. It won't because, Colorado to me is going to win. BYU, will get to them later. They're going to win. They only have 2 losses in the league. That would eliminate all the 3-loss teams. Anyway, Kansas 5-6. Hottest team in the Big 12, other than Arizona State. And they have a chance to get to a bowl game. It's been an amazing turnaround for them. They've won 3 in a row. They've won 4 of their last 5. They have only 1 turnover in the last 3 games. I think there's a lesson there, to be sure. Also in those games, they've never had more than 24 passing attempts. So this is a team that is going to, like we mentioned, 331 rushing yards last week. They're going to try to run it down your throat. They will do that against Baylor as well. They're kind of middle of the pack, Baylor, in rushing defense, 7th in the league. I think that third downs are going to be a big deal in this game. Kansas is 1st in the league in third down conversions. Baylor 2nd in third down defense. Red zone is going to be a big deal in this game. Kansas very good in the red zone. They're 2nd in the league in red zone touchdown percentage, and they're 1st in red zone touchdown percentage defense. So these are, if you look at all that stuff, like not turning the ball over, running the ball, good on third down, good in the red zone. That's how you win a lot of football games. I've been going with almost every team that has a senior day the last 2 weeks. I'm going against that this week. I am not going to pick against Kansas. Again, they are too hot. I'm taking the Jayhawks to finish this run out, get to a bowl game, and stamp, Lance Leipold's name as one of the best coaches in college football.
Kansas, they're kind of like the Undertaker of college football. Like they were down, and all of a sudden they just rise back up, and they're back in the ring competing again. Jalen Daniels, solid quarterback. Defense, very physical, maybe a little too dirty sometimes. I'm not the biggest fan of that hit on Shedeur Sanders. I thought, oh man, that could have
bad news.
That could have been a killer for Shedeur. Very dirty there. But physical defense, I think that's gonna travel. I think Devin Neal, the running back for Kansas, last week he had 207 yards on the ground. I think he's gonna have another big game. So I'm going with the hottest team in the Big 12 right now, and their run game. I think they're gonna figure out a way to pull this one off against Baylor. But shout out to Baylor. Dave Aranda, that guy was on the hot seat, and now it looks like he's gonna be sticking around for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, all due respect to Baylor, they've been playing really well too. There's a reason this point spread is only 1.5.
Yep.
So it's basically a pick 'em. Kansas is a slight favorite in this game. We're all going with the Jayhawks. Brett Farah is taking Kansas as well in this one. Okay. The other 10 a.m. game, that's West Virginia at Texas Tech. This game is on FS1. Texas Tech, when we sent out the point spreads, favored by 3.5 over the Mountaineers. It's gone down to 3, so you might be able to get it at 3 if you're looking for Texas Tech, which is obviously a better value than 3.5, but it is what it is for us. Both teams have clinched bowl berths. West Virginia took care of that last week. Texas Tech, they're 7-4. So they've had a really pretty good season here under Joey McGuire. Texas Tech, they've won 2 of their last 3, put up a ton of offense, as we mentioned last week, against Oklahoma State. 404 of those 543 yards were through the air, but they also have Taj Brooks, who is a great running back. And if you look at a lot of West Virginia defensively, and they're 14th in the league in total defense and passing defense. They're 15th in the league in third down defense. So those are things that worry you. Not that Texas Tech is good on defense, because they're last in scoring defense and they're 15th in total defense. So I would expect another shootout type of game here. And I would lean slightly toward Texas Tech at home on senior day to get this done. And, win, the score could be the same as last week, honestly. If it was 54-48 again, that wouldn't surprise me in the least. But if it is, and you got Texas Tech, you're on the winning side. So Red Raiders.
And this is where I get drunk, Lev. Give me West Virginia to pull it off on the road. I'm a guy who's been to Vegas, and I see the trends on the it's not blackjack, but is it craps or no roulette? Roulette. And I'm looking at the trends on the screen here,
Sure. Mm-hmm.
and the one thing about West Virginia is that every time they lose a game, they win back-to-back games. Rinse, wash, repeat. And looking at West Virginia, they lost to Baylor a couple weeks ago, 49-35, and they beat UCF 31-21. So if I'm looking at the trend here, I'm going with West
Okay.
Virginia to win on the road. I like West Virginia a lot. I think they've been also dealing with a lot of injuries this season. I think they are better than what their record shows. Neil Brown has kind of been coaching for his job this year, and I think that they get their 7th win of the year, and Neil Brown can just kind of take a big deep breath.
Yeah, you got to go against me on some of these too
Yeah.
in order to catch up, right?
Yep.
Because you're down by 4. Brett is taking Texas Tech in this one. Our game, the Territorial Cup game, is the next one up on the schedule. We will skip that for now and go to the late afternoon and evening window. The first of those games is TCU at Cincinnati. This game's on ESPN Plus. TCU's favored in this game at Cincinnati by 3 points. And I mean, there's reasons for that, right? Because Cincinnati's been sitting on 5 wins since October 19th. It's been a while for the Bearcats. They've gone 0-4 since. But I will say, if you look at those 4 games, 3 of the 4 have been on the road, okay? The teams that they faced, Colorado, West Virginia, Iowa State, and Kansas State. 3 of those teams are among the 5 best teams in the league, right? So it's been a really tough schedule for the Bearcats. They're still 5th in the league in total offense. TCU's 3rd. They're 3rd in the league in rushing defense. So you'll like to see that. I thought that one of the things that impressed me the most about TCU last week was Savion Williams.
Yeah.
Interesting player. He's like a 6'5" receiver, about 225 pounds, but he's rushed in the last 5 games 40 times for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns.
That's like if T-Mac put on 15 pounds and started playing running back.
Yeah, right? Like, you just don't see that body type being able to do that. But anyway, this one, I'm going to go with the Bearcats here. They have a lot to play for, to get to bowl eligibility in their 2nd season in the Big 12. They're at home. They're getting points. It's senior day. They're due to win. TCU is already locked up a bowl berth at 7-4. Not as much incentive for them. Might be cold in Cincinnati. I'm taking the Bearcats.
Just because I got a zig when Michael Lev zags, give me TCU to pull off the win on the road. I think Josh Hoover is a pretty good quarterback, I would say. I think it was Dwayne Akina. He actually gave him a ton of credit in his press conference this week. He said, to make some of those throws there at the end of that first half, when you got guys right there in your grill to really, when you're going to get killed and you still have the confidence to step up and make that throw. Quarterbacks, man, some of these guys are cut from different cloths. Noah Fafita had a throw like that against Utah. I think Josh Hoover's as tough as they get. The Horned Frogs, they got a good one over the next couple of years in Josh Hoover. I'm going with the Horned Frogs to win.
All right. The next game is Farmageddon.
Yeah, baby.
5:30 p.m. our time. Kansas State at Iowa State. Kansas State's back in the CFP top 25 at number 24. Iowa State is number 18. This game is on Fox. And Iowa State is favored by 2.5 at home. Makes sense. They're kind of both. They're in similar boats. Iowa State has a good path to get to the Big 12 championship game. If I'm understanding it correctly, if it ends up in a 4-way tie, it's Arizona State and Iowa State that go. And for that 4-way tie to happen, all 4 of them need to win this week. And they're all favored to win, but this is by far the toughest game that any of the 4 face. BYU is against Houston at home, Colorado, Oklahoma State. ASU is heavily favored against a struggling Arizona team. This will be a war. And last year's game was a crazy snowstorm. They called it Snowmageddon. Iowa State won 42-35 in Manhattan. Like, nobody could tackle in that game. If you look at the weather forecast this week, Justin, there's no snow in the forecast for Ames, but it's a high of 27 degrees on Saturday with a low of 10. And this game will be kicking off at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. So our games, I think the kickoff temperature is like 77 degrees or something. So different worlds there to be sure. So Iowa State, they pulled out that win at Utah last week. They are still first in the league in scoring defense. Kansas State also good on defense. They're third. Iowa State is fourth in total offense. Kansas State sixth. So pretty even matchup in a lot of ways. What's weird about Iowa State to me, this is a really strange stat. I don't know what you make of this, but they're first in the league in pass defense, but they're last in sacks. Like, I don't know how both of those things are possible. Kansas State also doesn't allow us a lot of sacks to happen. Anyway,
great DBs.
I still think that Kansas State is slightly better. And like if you played out this Big 12 season 100 times, 100 simulations, that Kansas State would win more than anyone else. They had a weird rainy game at Houston that they lost. They had kind of an avalanche of bad plays happen in the middle eight against BYU. I'm getting points if I take Kansas State in this game. And just in the interest of chaos, in the interest of making that BYU game, that's the last one on the slate, I think more meaningful, which I think it would be if Iowa State lost. I'm going to take the other Wildcats in this one to win and get revenge for last year's Farmageddon game.
And Iowa State, they've had Kansas State's number in recent Farmageddons. They won 3 out of the last 4. And if I'm not mistaken, 4 out of the last 6. And then before then, Kansas State was just from 2008 to 2017. Kansas State was just clobbering Iowa State. But I think this game, I'm going with the Cyclones here. And I think that it's going to create some interesting scenarios later on throughout the day. But I think that Iowa State, they're going to get it done. And I'm curious to see how next year's Farmageddon is going to go, Lev, because next year's Farmageddon is in a neutral site in August at the start of the series in Ireland, which I think is awesome. So I love that we're bringing Farmageddon over across the pond to our friends in Ireland. But this Farmageddon, I'm going to go with Iowa State.
All right, last game of the night is Houston at BYU. This is an 8:15 p.m. kickoff, and that game is going to be on ESPN. BYU is pretty heavy favorite in this game, as you might expect, by 13 points. They're now down to 19th in the CFP rankings after back-to-back losses. Crazy ending against ASU. They almost came all the way back in that game after a huge deficit. I think the Big 12 title race could be decided by the time this game hits halftime, depending on how things go. It's a 5:30 kickoff for Kansas State and Iowa State, so it'll end around 8:45, 9 o'clock. Going into the second quarter in Provo, they might know their fate. They might not, depending on how things go. I think regardless of all that, there is no chance that I'm taking Houston in this game. Like, no freaking way. I don't care if it was like 23 points instead of 13. I mean, I could see a shutout in this game. I mean, Houston has scored 13 in its last 2 games. They have 5 games this year with 10 or fewer points. BYU is going to play pissed off in this game after blowing their opportunity, losing back-to-back games. It's senior night for them.
Yeah.
They always have a good crowd. Whether they have a chance to make the Big 12 game or not, I just can't see any path for the Cougars to compete in this game. So the other Cougars, I should say, the Houston Cougars, I'm taking the BYU Cougars to win and cover the 13.
Yeah, BYU, I think they're going to be super pissed about what happened last week. And they had an opportunity there at the end, one of the craziest endings you'll see in college football this season, when ASU just decided to back all the way back up with their quarterback, Sam Levitt. Like, he was just running backwards, got down, then they tried to throw the ball up to burn off the clock. And then it was like, hey, no, there's 1 second left. BYU's got a chance to set up for a Hail Mary. So you got to get 10 to 20,000 people off the field, figure out a way to clear off the field. And they were able to do it. BYU, they were so close. They were on the 2-yard line, almost scored on that play. I feel like they feel like they deserve to be in the Big 12 title race. They need to be at Jerry's World this year. And so I think that Houston, considering they have nothing to play for right now, they're at 4 wins right now. They're not going to a bowl game. BYU on senior day with that team. Yeah, I think it's going to get very, very ugly. But for picks purposes, I'm going to go BYU to win, but Houston to cover.
Just because you have to.
Because I have to.
Right.
Yeah, I'm desperate right now.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Brett is also taking BYU to win and cover in this one. So those 2 games that BYU's lost by a combined 9 points.
Crazy.
It's not like they're getting blown out in these games. Great segue into the Territorial Cup, because one of the kind of the pillars of this ASU season is great record in 1-score games. One of the reasons that ASU's got the record that it has, they are 6-1 in 1-score games this year, versus 1-3 last year. So they are finding a way to win these games. As mentioned, they have stability on the offensive line. They have improved quarterback play. They are a much better rushing team than they have been. They're second in the league in rushing defense. They are opportunistic on defense. They have 13 interceptions. They convert third downs at a high rate, 47.7%. That's second in the league. They are vulnerable in red zone touchdown percentage. If you can get into the red zone, you can score against ASU. They're 15th in the league in that particular category. I thought the point spread would be higher in this game, Justin. I got to tell you. Our spread is 8.5. I thought it would be, I honestly thought it could be double that.
12.5?
I'm not kidding. I thought it could even be higher. But Arizona's getting a lot of respect because they're at home. It's a rivalry game and all of that stuff. But I don't think it's a great value on the Arizona side. I would, if I'm betting Arizona, I'd like to get 10 or more in this game. And if that number is under 10, I'm taking ASU, and that's what I'm doing in this one. As much as I would like to see some drama, as much as I'd like to see an upset, with the uncertainty surrounding Jonah Sava Inaya, the way the 2 teams are going, I think it's going to be really tough. And I don't think it's a great value to take U of A. So I'm going to take ASU to win and cover the 8.5 for the 1:30 p.m. game on Fox and at Arizona Stadium.
Yeah, this is tough because earlier in the podcast, I said that Jonah Savianaya, his health, that is going to determine whether or not Arizona's going to win or lose. If he does not play, then no chance in hell. But if you have that extra protection for Noah Fafita, then maybe you might be able to pull something out. Chris Hunter, I think, has emerged as maybe wide receiver 1 for next season when Tetairoa McMillan leaves for the NFL draft. Noah Fafita's really establishing a nice connection with him so far this year. I like the rise that Chris Hunter is on right now. But, man, I just have a hard time picking the Arizona Wildcats. I really do. I think that this game with Cam Scattaboo and that rushing attack, and also, ASU, they're not overlooking Arizona because they have the Big 12 championship on the line here. They're locked in on this game because Arizona won the last 2 Territorial Cups. So you mean to tell me, like, oh, yeah, we can go to the Big 12 championship game while also regain the Territorial Cup? So I think that this is going to be the best version you'll see ASU play. But you know what, Lev? I'm a numerologist, baby. And if you look at the years that a Territorial Cup game is played and years that end in 4, Arizona has not lost. In 1914, they won. 1924, they did not play. 1934, Arizona won. 1944, they did not play because of World War II. And then from 54, 64, 74, all the way on down, they have won the Territorial Cup game in years that end in 4. So I'm not going to go against history, Lev. I'm going with the Arizona Wildcats to win this game.
That just reeks of desperation. Justin. Ridiculous. What? You're going back to the 1914 Territorial Cup to
Yeah,
justify your crazy pick? Okay. Hey, look, like I said, it would be awesome if
I'm
it would
desperate.
be it would be awesome if it happened, right? Like you can imagine the scene at Arizona Stadium, like getting to end this somewhat miserable season with a field storming would be pretty sweet for the players, for the fans, all of that stuff. I just don't see it. Brett is taking ASU to win, but he is taking U of A to cover. So he obviously foresees a close game. I think we all hope it's a close game, right? No one wants to see another blowout. Those are uninteresting. But it's going to take a lot. I mean, I kind of feel like Arizona has to play an almost perfect game to pull this off. And that's hard to do.
I did a simulation on College Football 25 last night.
Yeah.
And the video game has Arizona winning 47-45, or no, 45-43 in triple overtime.
Oh, my.
Tai Uiagalelei with the game-winning sack.
Oh,
On that
my.
two-point conversion. It's
wow. Okay.
It's super epic. You got to check it out.
Wow.
I'll be posting that video
on incredible
Tucson.com.
how many of those simulations that you've done have had these like crazy endings. God, it's like must-see TV.
It's the best.
Watching these unfold. We were talking to one of the guys who works over at U of A the other day, Mike Lowry. He does a lot of the camera work and sets up the YouTube videos and stuff. And he was saying like he knows that it's fake, but you turn it on and you can't stop watching.
It's the best. All right, so we got a big one for the Territorial Cup game. Arizona looking to make it 3 in a row, which has not happened in a long, long time. And ASU looking to end their drought and, in the process, go to the Big 12 championship game and maybe even the CFP. So lots at stake here on Saturday. And, of course, the Arizona Wildcats are looking to get the good vibes back for Brent Brennan and his staff going into the offseason. So we have plenty to look forward to. It should be a fun one at Arizona Stadium. Kickoff is at 1:30 p.m. between the Arizona Wildcats and the ASU Sun Devils. You can find all of our coverage of that game on Tucson.com and the Wildcaster mobile app. Lev, real quick, your favorite Thanksgiving dish?
Yeah, it depends on how it's prepared and, kind of who's doing the cooking and so forth. But I like stuffing quite a bit. I guess some people call it dressing. There's probably a difference between the two. I like pumpkin pie a lot. I don't know if that counts as a dish because it's a dessert.
Absolutely.
I think with Thanksgiving, like it's kind of it's everything together. It's the mashed potatoes, it's the turkey, it's the stuffing. When you put that plate together and go back for seconds, there's just something about it. And there's a lot of football over the course of the weekend. It's just about everybody gets a day off except Bruce Pascoe, who of course will be covering basketball in the Bahamas that day. But I'm sure they'll have a nice spread for him down there. Yeah, I think it's the total package to me for Thanksgiving, more so than any kind of one standout. What about you?
I'm a sucker for good mac and cheese. Like if you can bring a good mac and cheese to Thanksgiving, you have my heart forever. I'm a big green bean casserole guy.
Sure. I like that too. Yep.
And my family from New Mexico, they make red chili gravy, which is really awesome. And I just douse it all over my stuffing, put it on my turkey, put it on the mashed potatoes. It's pretty much the thing that covers the entire plate. And then
could you bring some of that back to Tucson with you?
I'm going to try.
Would that be possible?
I'm going to try. Actually, my co-host, Ali Farhang, he was like, you got to bring some back. And I'm like, okay, I got to tell my aunt, hey, the folks down in Tucson want to test out your product. So give me some in a Tupperware. But yeah, I'm excited for Thanksgiving. It should be a lot of fun. And I'm excited for this game coming up here on Saturday. But anyways.
We'll do one podcast next week, unless there's some crazy news that we're not expecting. And then after that, we'll start doing some basketball pods here coming up, looping in some of our other colleagues. I think we'll do football pods kind of on a, as news merits basis. And there will be plenty of news, especially in December. So stay tuned.
Get ready. Portal Armageddon. That's pretty much what it is.
Portalgeddon.
Yeah.
We got to workshop that one, but that's the idea.
All right, plenty to look forward to this weekend. Hope all of you guys have a great Thanksgiving. We appreciate you guys. We're very thankful for you guys for always listening and looking at our content. Seriously, it means the world to us. Please keep supporting us. We love doing what we do, and it should be a fun one Saturday afternoon at Arizona Stadium. Thank you guys for listening and watching. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and comment the Wildcast podcast.